Hey you guys, welcome to a developer interview here at PSVR without Parole. With me this week is Martin Wheeler from Recluse Industries, the one-man team behind the newest PlayStation VR sensation, Separation.
Hi Brian.
Where are we calling each other from?
I'm from York in the UK, and you are?
I'm the East Coast, right outside Boston, Massachusetts, in the US. So we were just talking about, before we started this interview, we were talking about time zone differences, and so Martin's got me up before noon, which is crazy. So
I'm sorry about that. We could have done it later. You know, I'm more of a night person, so.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Perfect. I knew we spoke the same language. As soon as I played your game, I knew we had something in common.
Oh yeah.
And we will talk about Separation soon, but first, I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, what is the Martin Wheeler story?
Okay. Well, I started making games back in the mid '80s, I guess, when I was a schoolboy. I don't know. You would have heard like the Commodore 64 in the US at the time, and I did games for ZX Spectrum, things like that. So I come from that 8-bit old school background.
Nice. I grew up on the Commodore 64, man. Like that was my entire childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites? Favorite Commodore 64 games?
Yeah. Do you remember Sanction? That was an old shoot 'em up on the 64. URIDIUM was another shoot 'em up on the 64.
I do remember that one.
But I never had a 64. I had the ZX Spectrum, which is the UK, the British computer. It's not as powerful as a 64, but it was great. You know, it's a really good entry into video games. Nice. Yeah, I kind of miss it.
Yeah, I think we all do a little bit. So what did you do after that era?
So I left school actually at 16. I'd already had a couple of games published on the ZX Spectrum by Virgin Games. That's Richard Branson's company. And I went to work at Virgin in London. I would have been until I was about 19, I guess. Did some ZX Spectrum stuff, some Amstrad C64. And then I became a toilet cleaner.
Interesting career path change.
It is, yeah. It's a bit of a diversion. I just left Virgin. I won't go into it. It's kind of a long story, but I didn't find anything else immediately, and I was living with my mum and dad still, so it would have been 19, 20, and the only thing I could get at the time was I was a temporary cleaner in a hospital down the road, which was maybe a low point for me, I guess, in my career. But I got a call from a games contact, and I got back into games and started to do things for a Game Boy. Nice. So I did Warlocked, which is a little known. It's like a Warcraft, but for Game Boy Color.
Wow, yeah, that's a new one to me. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it didn't really. It kind of went under the radar, but it was a good game for what you can do on the Game Boy.
Yeah, the Game Boy had thousands of games. Like, so many went under the radar. It was just hard to. There was no curation. It was hard to tell which ones were good and which ones were bad at the time.
Yeah. I mean, we actually pitched it to Blizzard, but I don't think they thought it was possible to do Warcraft on the Game Boy. So we kind of went ahead and did something, our version anyway, similar kind of thing, and had a sort of Pokemon element to it where you collected different wizards with different powers, which you could use in your battle. After a while, again, I kind of fell out of games. I was working at Bit Studios, which is a developer based in London, and around 2002, I think I kind of resigned because they wanted me to relocate to London, and we just moved up. We'd had a baby and just moved up north to York, so it wasn't going to happen. And so I got into doing music, which was also something I've been into for a long time. And so I took a bit of a break from games at that point, and was just concentrating on music for a while.
Was this the start of Vector Lovers, or did
it was,
that happen?
Yeah, that was how that began. Would have been about 2002, I think.
And that,
God, that's a long time ago.
it doesn't seem like it. I feel like for guys that are, at least my age or older, 2000 seems like just a few years ago. But then when you think about it, you're like, holy crap, 20 years ago. It's like a long
Yeah,
time.
it is. Yeah, but it doesn't seem that long ago when I think back to it.
So has Vector Lovers always been just you, or did you ever collaborate with other
Yes.
people?
No, it was just me. I mean, I did do remixes with people. Um, I co-produced a track with Tracy Thorn from Everything But the Girl,
Hmm.
and Ladytron I did a remix for, several other bands. But the Vector Lover stuff was just essentially me.
So it sounds
So
like it's a fairly successful venture then.
it was okay. Yeah, I mean, I could just about live on it, I guess.
Nice.
So not super successful,
Well,
but it was kind of an alternative to having an office job, I guess.
yeah, I remember one time I was hanging out with the band. I don't know if you're familiar, Super Drag, and we hung out with them after a concert one time, and I was talking to John Davis, the lead singer, talking about how little they make, on record sales and even going on tour, and
Yeah.
and they were basically like, he was talking about making like something like $400 or $500 a week. He goes, but all that matters is getting to do what you
Oh,
love, and
oh,
it's like that's amazing. That's if
yeah,
you get to do what you love, then like it's everything else is gravy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think. I mean, I couldn't actually. Uh, I mean, I've got two kids, and I couldn't actually really survive on just doing Vector Lovers. It wasn't enough. Once you paid the rent and bought clothes and food and stuff, paid the bills. So we ended up. We lived in Berlin in Germany for a while. I moved there just because, I guess, because of the music, and we love the scene. We love Berlin so much. But I ended up. This is how I got back into games. Was that I did end up getting an office job in Berlin. So it was kind of going back to. I mean, I was actually just doing like apps, really, mobile phone stuff. But it gave me a chance. This is where I picked up Unity, which would have been, I guess, about 2008 when I started using it. So it gave me that entry back into making games on my own, which is what I'd done when I was a schoolboy. Really, it's kind of nice to go back to that. Um,
Do you find a solace in doing stuff on your own, not having to like worry about what other people, the other
well,
people's input or other people's ideas? You just want to kind of create your own thing.
um, not especially. I mean, it kind of is what it is. The whole working alone thing. It's actually really hard. I did have before this game. I was actually working on another project called Vigil, and there was a small team, so there were four of us working on it. And I think actually that was a lot nicer, just having some to and fro with ideas, and having essentially other people that could specialize in a certain area that you really don't know much about.
Yeah.
Really, I actually had someone who could code really well on that. So it would be lovely. I think the ideal would be to be able to have your own creative direction, but to be able to work with a small team. Doing the whole thing on your own is pretty hard. There's another developer actually here in York, Andy Gibson, Team Pesky, and yeah, he's also just released a game, on his own, and we're both saying how hard it is when you have to take care of everything. You can't be a master of all trades, really.
So development on Separation started like 4 years ago, right? You've been doing this kind of, I want to say in your spare time, but it hasn't. I'm sure it's been occupying far more than just your spare time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I worked full time on it for a couple of years, and then it was half the time on it for the other two, because I was working jobs to try and keep money coming in. The budget for the game is really small, so I think if I'd got the game out as planned in 1 year, that was the original plan for the game. Yeah, don't laugh. The original plan for the game was I'll develop this in 1 year. I took a pitch into Sony, and they said, yeah, great, we'll give you a little bit of money towards it, and you can return it in 1 year, fine. But I planned on having a team of 4 people, and it didn't. It just didn't happen, and it ended up taking one person 4 years to do it instead. So
Makes sense.
yeah, so the budget, it really didn't cover 4 years worth of work on it. So this is why I had to do other stuff part time, to keep the roof over our heads and stuff like that. So
Sure.
that's kind of how it ended up taking so long. I'm sure some people look at it and going, "Why it took you 4 years to make this?" No, but it's hard. You have to work when you can. You can't always do it.
Now, since Sony helped fund the project, does that make it a PlayStation exclusive, or do you have the ability to bring this to PC as well?
Yeah, it's exclusive for 6 months.
Okay.
I think if you look at the contract. So I will be looking to bring it to Oculus for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. We love our exclusives, man, but VR is still so young that I feel like exclusives at this point don't make any sense. I think when it comes to good games, we need to share the wealth and make sure that as many people get to play as many VR games as possible.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I definitely will be bringing it to Oculus. I mean, it's been developed, partly on Oculus as well, so it's definitely going to happen at some point.
I would ask, man, to work on a game for 4 years, and especially knowing, and sorry, sirens on my end. There are always sirens in the background.
They're coming for you.
Yeah, no, they know me. They know what I've done. But to work on a game for 4 years, that's so obviously not a typical mainstream game. And then to finally release it out into the world for critics to bash on it and the internet to be very internet-like about it. How is that? How does that feel? How is that? That must have been super nerve-wracking to finally put this out into the world.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm kind of keeping it subconscious, but it was actually pretty traumatic. Yeah. I mean, I kind of knew it was one of those games that's not going to be for everyone. And I think it's a hard game to review if you're not just an enthusiast as well. I mean, if you're a paid reviewer and you kind of want to get through it and you're kind of expecting maybe a more directed game-like experience, then I can imagine it would be a bit annoying. But I think it's the sort of game that I hope that if you just go into not really expecting anything in particular, but just you can wander and discover stuff, I hope that that's where it works. And I hope people find some meaning in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think it was going to get the amazing positive reception that some people were giving it, including ourselves?
I'm not sure if I really thought about that too much. Actually, I think I was too busy worrying about how the fuck do I render this, or why won't it run at 60 frames a second, or so. No, it's been just to get messages from people saying they really loved it. Really, just to have that from a personal message from someone, it really means a lot that it connected with a person. That's what it was all about for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's successful and can cover the cost of making it, that would be fantastic. But yeah, to get a human reaction that meant something to someone or they enjoyed spending the time in it, that's what really counted.
You've been very clear about depression and your father passing away in 2010, and this being all part of the inspiration to the game. But do you feel like that is still, despite the fact that you made it with a specific intention and a specific thing in your mind, that is still open to interpretation?
Yeah. Originally, the game was a bit more personal in terms of the text in it, and artifacts that I placed in the game were more, I guess, personal to my experience of losing my dad. But I didn't feel 100% comfortable with that, and I actually felt that making it more ambiguous would make it more open for other people to interpret it in their own way. Yeah. So I wanted to keep the theme of, being bereaved or that kind of emptiness, and allow people to explore that, but without being too specific about it being things that have occurred to me, losing my father. So it definitely did have an effect on the direction I took with the game. But at the end, I think all the really personal stuff to me ended up sort of coming out of the game, so that people could maybe apply it to themselves more, I think.
Yeah, the Vector Lover soundtrack obviously was perfect for this. I had to go back and discover some of your older music to see if this was sort of the path you'd been on the whole time, and it sort of seemed like it was. It sort of seemed like you finally made a game that encompassed the Vector Lover's vision, if that makes any sense, right? It's like people might play the game and go, "Oh wow, the music really fits here," and I'm kind of thinking, "Well, he finally made a game that fits the music."
Yeah, it's definitely like a sort of coming together of the two things. Obviously, I've never been really good at combining the two until now. I've done games on the one hand, electronic music on the other, and they've always been a separate thing, and I've never really managed to get them to gel together until this game. So again, this is why when people say, "Oh, I really loved it," it really means a lot to me, because I've put both sides of what I do into it. So yeah, it's the first time it's actually come together like that.
So it seems like before launch, like you and I would DM a few times here and there as I was playing it, and I know AJ was also voicing some of his concerns about the game while we were playing it for review, and you were already working on updates at that time.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're probably in the midst of working on some patches for separation now.
Yeah, right now, yeah.
And you can, I'm sure if you see the comments, there's people who are vehemently opposed to click turning and this or that or whatever, or head movement, the whole thing. We're a very needy group when it comes to VR gaming. Can you tell us what updates are planned and kind of where you're at with each of them?
Yeah, okay. So for the next update, what I do have, I've got the smooth rotation in, and a few people have asked for that. Personally, I hate it. It just makes me feel sick.
Gotcha.
But fair enough, if people want that, I can put that in, so it's not a problem. The way it works is in the options menu, you can take the slider down to 0 for the amount of angle, and it will just convert to smooth turning if you do that.
Okay.
What else have people asked for? Yeah, the other comment, which was pretty fair, was that it's quite hard to interact with the sort of wheel, cranks, lever things. And yeah, they're now joystick operated. So you basically gaze at them, and once it's focused, you can use you hold down the action button, and you use the joystick left and right to rotate it left and right, clockwise and anti-clockwise, which actually feels a lot nicer. And I don't know why I didn't do that originally. I'm also trying to fix a few other bugs. I know people had issues. I know AJ had a problem. He couldn't get the hidden trophy. There's a crow vision.
The vision of crows,
trophy.
Yeah.
And that occurs to me. I think I did screw that up with the last update, actually. So that will be easier to obtain in the next update.
Every time you fix one thing, like 3 things break, right?
Yeah. Somebody sent me a little video on Twitter that they managed to fall down a hole. There's like a little pit in one of the buildings with an obelisk in it, and I think she managed to somehow fall into the hole when she was looking up at the sky. So yeah, I was looking at the collision code. I really hate this sort of thing. It's really tricky. Sometimes if you get it's really bad with little holes actually. And at the end, I just thought, oh no, I'm just going to fill the hole in. So just change the model. So there's no hole in that building now. So you can't fall in it. Okay. It's better.
That's funny. I actually stepped into that hole and then stepped right back out. So I did experience that, but I didn't fall into it.
Okay.
So now there's just no hole.
Start.
Oh, great.
Yeah. There was a couple of other bugs. I think one of the reviewer for Upload VR mentioned that he could only use the save points once each time. And yeah, that is a bug. You're actually meant to be able to reuse them as many times as you want.
Okay.
At the moment, the workaround is just to, once you save the game at that point, just reload it straight away if you need to use that save point again. I'm trying to think if there's any others. On the improvement side, I had a chance to look at the rendering, and I've managed to increase the draw distance significantly, almost up to like double.
Wow.
With him improved the fog effect is improved as well, so it looks quite different. Actually, you get a much more panoramic view. So yeah, I haven't really noticed any frame rate issues with it. So that should be in the next update as well.
When should we
Uh,
expect this update? It sounds massive.
right, I'm hoping to get it out before at least before Half-Life Alex drops. So I think I've penned in like 18th of March. I'm going to try and do that, but I've also got to test it really thoroughly. I mean, maybe I can get some builds out to people to test as well to make it a bit easier to test.
So you want to get it done before Alex, because once Alex comes out, that's all you're going to be doing is playing Alex.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does look
I'm
pretty
looking forward
good.
to that. It does look amazing, actually. So yeah, there should be a few things. You know, I really basically I just want to keep updating the game and building on it. It's not really finished for me. It's more like a starting point to just continue building on it. So hopefully I get the chance to do that.
Excellent. That's great, man. I can't wait to see how your game improves. You know,
Thanks.
I feel like I noticed little things here and there as I was playing through, and I think, you know, I've gone on record saying it took me almost 7 hours to beat. I certainly saw you originally said it was going to take 2, and I was
That
like,
was
this guy's crazy. He has no idea what he's talking about.
well, you know, I mean, it's had so little testing. I feel guilty. You guys are basically guinea pigs. I mean, I think actually, but the point it was accepted by Sony, probably only 2 or 3 people have played it all the way through. You know, it's not a lot. And I only had kind of my knowledge of the game to guess how long it would take to complete. So I just kind of, and when I was testing it, man, I would speed run the whole thing as quickly as I could. But yeah, I was thinking, I'll be conservative and say 2 hours in case people come back and say, oh, I finished it in like 150. I want my money back. So when people were saying, oh, it's taking me 5 hours, yeah, I was amazed. I was actually pleased, though, you know, that people would want to spend that much time in it. Was great.
Yeah, I think my 7 hour run was almost straight through. You know, I put the VR
Wow.
headset on, and I would take little breaks to get up and have some coffee every couple hours, and, you know, check in with AJ, see where he was at in the game,
Right.
which was great. It was so cool because the whole world was a mystery, and to have somebody else that was playing simultaneous with me,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know, knowing, being able to check in and be like, did you see this? Did you just do that? What happened after that? How did you get past this part? And to be able to do that for 7 hours almost straight was awesome, man. It was such an
Oh,
experience I
great.
feel like I haven't had in such a long time. Um, this brought me back to you know, we make the visual comparisons. You've made the visual comparisons even on the PlayStation blog with Eco, right?
Yeah.
PlayStation 2 Classic, and I absolutely agree. You know, stark lighting and some great contrast, and just the buildings as a whole, and all the structures and everything really reminiscent of that game. But it actually the game itself brought me back to a time like that, where I feel like I haven't played a game like this in a very, very long time, and it was comforting. Something very comforting about it.
No, thanks. I mean, it's really amazing and encouraging to hear that, you know, you've enjoyed it in that way. And yeah, Eco was definitely a huge influence. It's probably one of my favorite games of all time. So I really wanted to capture some of that sort of melancholy, isolated feeling that the game had. Obviously, I would have loved to have another character in the game, perhaps that you work with, but yeah, maybe in future.
Maybe in the future, but I'm really glad this came out exactly the way it did. I don't think I'd want to change very much about it at all.
Right. I mean, you know, the giant colossal robot. It did actually walk around when I was developing it. I had a huge thing, just like in, say, Shadow of the Colossus. There's some video of it way back on my earlier Twitter a few years back. But it didn't feel. I mean, it was going to pick the player up and carry them to the temple island in the center.
Oh wow!
But it kind of didn't really fit somehow. The whole mechanism felt like a bit too much of a ride anyway. And then obviously I found a better way for the player to be able to get around than on this one ride that would take you to one point. So yeah, I lost that in the end.
Were there other things that you had maybe you know, in the original outline for Separation that didn't make it to the final game?
Yeah, I think there was quite a lot of stuff. I mean, I guess maybe a quarter of the time of development was spent on things that never made it in. that's just the nature of game dev, I think, probably, or especially if you do it like me, which is you have like a 2-page concept doc, and then someone says, "Yeah, go and make the game," and then actually you're just using that 2-page concept doc for the rest of the time. So I experimented with a lot of stuff that didn't really make it in.
Anything specifically that you're sad didn't make it in?
Yeah, there was going to be a secret disco, like a rope, because the Vector Lovers had this sort of robot disco kind of thing, and I was going to have like one room with a lot of robots that you could reactivate, and all the disco lights would come back on and they'd start dancing. Yeah, it never happened. So there was some pretty crazy ideas, but I think I'm kind of happy with how it turned out anyway.
I've got a few questions here from some of the Game Cats. So sorry.
Oh, cool.
The Game Cats, of course, viewers of Without Parole, our loyal fan base. By the way, I'm going to make you meow at some point, so be prepared for that. I know we didn't talk about that ahead of time. There's a reason I didn't tell you, because most people would back out of the interview if I told them they had to meow. But just prepare yourself for that.
Okay.
First question comes from Original Uberbitch, the bearded game cat. It says, my question is the following. Has he drawn any inspiration from art, history, or literature when designing Separation? The landscapes give a very intense purgatory from Dante's Divine Comedy vibe, and poses some of the sorrows. Oh, and the poses of some of the sorrows remind me of the petrified people in Pompeii.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. The Pompeii thing. Yeah, there's a figure that's kind of curled up like this, and that was definitely inspired by the remains of Pompeii. As coming from art, there's a German romantic landscape painter, Caspar David Friedrich. Mm-hmm. It's a big influence on. I think a lot of video games have taken a nod at his artworks. His landscapes, they're so melancholy and empty, but also there's this kind of vibe of the sublime, something like just a light in the sky. I love his work, so I tried to capture some of that kind of feeling. That was obviously, again, eco was an influence. There's also the artist Piranesi, who did a lot of these dungeon-like interiors. Fantastic dungeons that he used to draw. He's an Italian artist, going back a long way. So that's a lot of influences from art and literature.
There's been a discussion on our Discord server about the controller vibration in Separation, and so one of our viewers, Belramio, asks, the controller seems to vibrate over any little thing. I can't tell when it's a good or bad thing. I think he seems. I know when I was walking around the world, sometimes the controller would just kind of subtly vibrate. And I took that as my interpretation of that was like, oh, this is kind of a fragile world. There's like earthquakes and like avalanches probably happening in the background, and like, maybe this bridge isn't quite as sturdy as it seems. But it seemed like other people were saying, oh no, it's vibrating because you're too close to an object, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. And I was like, I didn't notice that at all while I was playing. What's the deal?
Yeah. No, I think they're probably right. Actually, it does vibrate to do with collisions. So that's something I'm going to look into, because it seems to be a bit oversensitive in that respect. Basically, it should vibrate if you bump up against something, but it does seem to be a bit too sensitive. But I like your creative interpretation of it as earthquakes. That's pretty nice, actually.
I was like, in my head, I was like, this is brilliant. Like, why, the controller's subtly kind of as like the wind's blowing and I'm walking over a bridge, and I was like, I feel like the bridge could collapse at any moment. This works for me. And then I was like, oh, cool. That's not what you meant to do at all.
Yeah. Oh,
my bad. If you feel like,
I'm sorry. No, it's cool. Your thought on it is good, actually.
If you feel like using that, feel free.
Yeah, yeah. I will. Yeah.
Brad out of hell says, I've played the game 3 times and would love to know if you intended it to be an escape or a reflective playground for people who suffer or previously suffered from loss or depression. He said, it feels like home to me, and not in a negative way.
Huh. Wow, that's amazing. That's exactly what I would want it to feel like, like a kind of home space that you can escape to.
Yeah.
I know it's a really melancholy, bleak environment. I think this might sound bizarre, but there's something really comforting about ruins and ruined places where I think it's because all the bad stuff's happened. You know, like it's the terrible thing is gone. It's in the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of stillness, that kind of it's all over, is something I can feel kind of peaceful with. You know, if I'd made some sort of environment with beautiful coloured flowers and plants and creatures everywhere, and you'd think this paradise could be destroyed. You know, it could be ruined, but you know what you get with a bleak environment. I can't. I've always liked that sort of feeling. But I'm so glad he feels that way. It's incredible. He could play through 3 times. Wow. Maybe he'll find there's something hidden in the game. As far as I know, nobody has found it yet. So I'm not sure if he'll be one having played it 3 times. But no one's contacted me about it or mentioned it at all. So.
Is it an item or a place you find? What am I keeping an eye out for, or are you just not going to tell us?
I can't give too much away. It's not really an item. It's something that is really deeply related to the whole theme of isolation and separation. Mm-hmm. Something that I feel really sad and sort of angry about. And I felt I had to put it in the game. I couldn't really release the game without at least, a kind of mention of this thing. So it's in there. You have to look to find it. That's all I can say. Okay. But it's not related to any of the collectibles in the game, any trophies or anything really that you have to do in the game. It's completely, it's something that people will pass by as they play without noticing, which is also kind of poignant when you find out what it is. But I'll shut up.
No, it's all good. I'm only on my second playthrough. I just did a 2-hour live stream a couple of days ago, just to show off the first parts of the game and to show people kind of like how the mechanics work a little bit deeper than my review went into. And I was glad to do it because people would stop in and be like, "Oh, I'm stuck right here. I got to watch you play through this and see how to get through it." So I'll keep my eyes out for the rest of that playthrough.
Yeah, I'm sure when somebody finds it. I mean, I hope it's not like made into a big public thing. It's more something I would like players to see and kind of. It would be like an epiphany moment. It's like when you do find it, it will be how obvious. Oh yeah, of course. So we'll see.
Okay.
It's not hidden anywhere out of the way. It's actually somewhere everyone will pass by as they play the game. So yeah.
Interesting. Next up, Bob Mack says, do you think the VR has opened the door to game possibilities that flat screen games could never truly achieve?
Yeah, definitely. The first time I tried VR, it was, for me, a real game changer. Just losing the edges of the screen, being able to look around like you do in real life. Yeah, definitely. As you said, it's a really young medium, so I think it could do with maturing. It would be nice to see more. I don't want to say arty experiences, but I think it's got so much possibility that hasn't been explored yet. So definitely, yeah.
I think you said it pretty well on the PlayStation blog. You were talking about that you don't like the term walking simulator, and that like an ambient adventure is maybe a more appropriate and better suited term for this kind of game.
Yeah.
And I think that the term ambient adventure actually escalates when and becomes even more appropriate when you put it into a VR setting, because you actually get to experience that ambiance in every, like pretty much in every perspective, every angle.
Yeah, it does give you such a different experience because you have this sense of scale and the depth, so you do really feel different to looking on a flat screen. I find it's a completely different experience. I'm not sure the game would really work on a flat screen actually.
Yeah, I don't know if it would. I think it would lose some of its impact.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you find it hard to go back to flat screen games after spending so much time in VR?
Actually, no. I mean, the 2 favorite games I played. I don't play a lot of games because I don't really have time. The 2 favorite games I played recently, I loved Inside.
Oh wow, yeah, great game.
yeah, which was obviously by Playdead, the follow-up to Limbo, which I also loved. And I'd say I play Superhot. I just thought that was amazing. But I don't actually have the VR version, so I have been playing that in 2D. And over Christmas, actually this might sound amazing, but I haven't actually had a PlayStation 4 very long. I only got one at Christmas. It's the first time
Wow.
I got a PS4 because I knew the game was going to be coming out, and it was Christmas, and finally had a little bit of extra money to buy one. So I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2 on that, which is great. It was really cool.
And the last question comes from Orseek the Game Cat. He says, and you might have already answered this, but maybe we can elaborate a little bit further. Did you choose VR because the headset provides the isolation that some people despise?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was, wow, like total escape, basically.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I dreamed about as when I was a 8-bit game dev. That one day you'd be able to it's a very lawnmower man thing, I guess,
Yep.
Totally. I think that isolation of VR has had a lot of bad press, but actually, if you think about it, I think it's a good thing. Whereas what I really don't like is, I think what's worse is mobile gaming, actually.
Yeah.
Like, because that takes you out. I like when I'm in the world, I like to be in the world. Yeah, so I'm not looking at my mobile phone constantly or playing games when I'm on the bus or on the train. I like to be present. And the thing with mobile, and especially like social media on mobile as well, it's constantly taking you away from the present.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I felt that my game, you are taken away, but it's something you do just sitting at home. It's not something that's going to involve. It's not going to just disrupt your interactions with other people. In the same way that mobile gaming is. I think the isolation of VR is a good thing, actually. It gives people some space to get away.
Yeah.
But it's not something you see people doing on the bus or walking around. That would be terrible, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could talk to you all day, and we could go round and round on separation, and hopefully
let's do it again.
Yeah, no, hopefully hopefully in a few months we can see where separation's at. We can talk about it a little bit more. But dude, I mean, for anyone who's watching this and didn't watch my review, it's one of the highest rated games I've ever given a rating to. It's a 9.2 out of 10. I called it a masterpiece.
Thank you.
No, thank you, man.
You're too kind.
And everyone agrees, no matter what their thoughts on the game are, everyone agrees that you're selling this way too cheap. $12.99 is way too inexpensive for what this game offers.
I kind of wanted to price it like an album, It's the Vector Lovers thing. It's my new album. I didn't want to make it like a really expensive thing. I just wanted it to be that kind of price.
Yeah.
Of course, now that I know it takes 7 hours to complete, I've changed my mind.
Yeah. And I think I'm maybe in the minority on that one. I think 5 hours is closer to what the average time seems to be. But man, did I enjoy my time just kind of meandering around that world.
I'm so glad. I mean, it really means a lot to me to get the feedback from people, and I'm just so happy that people have enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations, man. I hope this means that you don't have to go find more odd jobs, and hopefully you can just develop your next game. We really hope that this is a huge success for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so too.
All right, now's the time, man. We need you to meow for everybody.
Okay.
Make it big.
I haven't meowed for a while. I'll give it a go.
Meow.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was an amazing meow. I didn't know where you were going with it, but I got the ears, we got the passion. It was all there. I want to make that the thumbnail.
All right.
Martin Wheeler as a cat. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. And again, congratulations on all your success. We'll certainly be in touch. We can't wait to see what happens with separation.
Thanks, Brian. I'll keep you posted on the update.
All right. You have a good one.
All right. You have a good weekend.